James, what did you learn on this Caravan event last year that maybe you want to implement or change for this year? Anything?
Yeah, I don't know if it was anything specific that we would change. I thought it was extremely organized. I think the thing that kind of showed me right away is just the passion and the sense of community, probably more so than any place I've ever been. I've been a lot of places. And I knew that, but until you experience it yourself, it's kind of hard to explain. So that probably is the thing that jumped out to me the most. One of the things that we implemented last year, which I thought was great, was the photo booth. I think at one stop we did 700 pictures at a stop, which is great because it gives you an opportunity to interact individually with everybody. As we all learned, at the spring game this year, that's hard to do because you have the autograph session, you have 60,000 people show up, and there's going to be a group of people that leave disappointed, and we're constantly struggling with what the answer is to make sure everybody has a wonderful experience. But I thought last year went extremely well, so we're really just trying to kind of build on that. I think the one adjustment we made is that we did 16 stops last year. This year we're doing 12. I wanted to do 24, but they convinced me to only go to 12, so we cut it down.
James, last year at this time you were living out of your office, your family was still in Nashville. I'm wondering how much more comfortable this time of year is for you, maybe feeling part of the community, that sort of thing with your family here and having adjusted a little bit.
Yeah, very, very much so. Just having that support system there is great, because being able to go home where you're just dad and you're just James is awesome. My oldest daughter, Shola, she's really into sports. She asks a lot of questions. She's getting to that age. She's 8 years old right now and really curious. My youngest, Addie, she has no care in the world about sports or football. She just wants to play video games. So having that outlet to go home and visit with your wife and kids is great. Having the opportunity being in a small college town that every once in a while I can pick them up from school or go have lunch with them, which I've done a number of times, has been great.
James, I believe last year you said it might take you 4 years to get acclimated to Penn State. I'm curious if after 1 year you still feel the same way, and maybe some things that you had to acclimate yourself with over this past year.
Yeah, I think we're still kind of going through that. I don't think there's any doubt that we know Penn State better. We know the university, we know the community, we know the people, our own players so much better. I don't think there's any doubt of that, knowing the conference. The institutional knowledge and community knowledge we talked about is really, really important. Getting a chance to interact with all the other coaches as well. I think the fact that our leadership is in place right now is very important. The fact that President Barron and our athletic director, Sandy Barber, all those people are in place now, I think is great. We're all aligned. So those things are really valuable. But I think overall it's still a process. One of the things that I really like to do this time of year, which is hard to do with the Caravan, is I like to try to take people out to breakfast and lunch and pick their brains, people from the community, deans, people on campus that just have been there a long time. I always like to ask the question, what have you learned over the last 10, 15, 20 years that you wish you knew in the first couple years? And I've started to do those breakfasts and lunches and things like that, but haven't gotten as many of them done as I want to. Those things are really important to build a relationship, but also to learn from them. So we're pegging away at that right now. That's going to be a big task between now and Temple.
Have you had a memorable breakfast or lunch at this point, or something that's stuck with you, maybe an idea or anything like that?
No, I wouldn't say that. Mainly the people that I've had breakfast and lunch with are people that have been mentors since I arrived, people that have been part of the hiring process and things like that. I really want to branch out and start to interact with some people that I haven't gotten to know. I think that's one of the big mistakes that people make in our industry is we're on these college campuses and we're surrounded by so many really, really talented people that are experts in their field, and we don't take advantage of that resource enough. Whether it's leadership, whether it's business management, whatever it may be. There's so many really, really smart people in our community and on our campus that we need to take advantage of. A lot of times you go out of your way to bring speakers in from all over the country because there's a comfort level that you know them. But a lot of times the best resources you have are right in your own community, so we want to do a better job with that.
James, your thoughts maybe on the weekend, the draft weekend for the guys that got drafted, and also your thoughts on Michael not getting drafted. And did you have a conversation with Dion about staying? He seems to have a hard time maybe trying to find a spot within maybe NFL, even on a free agent basis.
Yeah, I think you guys have heard us talk about this before. We actually use a company that works with a lot of major programs across the country, and those guys come in and educate our players and their parents. We had them in for the spring game, educate them about the draft process, educate them on how to select an agent. Just any question that they may have, we got involved with them because what happens is you're right in the middle of recruiting or the season or whatever it may be, and guys are making maybe the biggest decision they've ever made. So trying to inform them, I think that all you can do is give them as much information as you possibly can so that they and their families can make educated decisions. I'm different than probably a lot of college football coaches. A lot of college coaches tell all the guys that they should come back. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I want every single one of our guys to graduate. But if they have a chance to be a first-round draft choice, and that's a high likelihood that that's going to happen, they got to consider it. It's too much money. I've always said if IBM or Google came to our computer engineering department on campus and offered somebody $12 to $15 million to come out after their sophomore year, they'd be gone. So our guys have got to consider it. But to me, for you to come out early, you need to be a first-round draft choice. If not, you need to go back to school, especially if you haven't gotten your degree yet. That's just my opinion based on all the research that we've done and all the people that we've talked to. A lot of the agents nowadays are selling kids on, well, don't worry about it, you'll make your money in your second contract. Well, the average NFL career is 3 years. NFL stands for not for long. You better have a degree that means something. You better make sure that you understand, what the likelihood is of your career in the NFL. So I just want our guys to factor all those things. I want their parents to factor all those things. And we're going to do everything in our power that our guys graduate before they leave, so now they can go on and pursue that dream. Our goal number one is to make sure our guys leave here as educated men and prepared for life, but it's also our job to make sure that they're able to play the game of football as long as they possibly can.
Kind of following up on that, there was a 30 for 30 a couple years ago or at G60 or whatever, about how players in the NFL, especially rookies, can go broke very quickly, especially if their career ends up being short. Do you think the collegiate system kind of educates these guys well enough to handle that massive change in how their lifestyle is, or is that something that can be improved on?
No, and that's why we hired this company, because we want to make sure that we're talking to our guys all the time about it. As you guys know, there's so many things that we have to spend time educating our young people on. Whether it's making great choices with drugs, making great choices with alcohol, making great choices when it comes to relationships, when it comes to agents and the NFL. I mean, there is 150 different topics that we constantly are trying to educate these young people on to make great choices and great decisions on, as well as prepare them to be successful, academically and athletically. So we work very, very hard at it. I think the documentary you're talking about is actually called Broke, which I think is a really valuable documentary. I think every student athlete in America should watch that. There was a book that was just written, I think, by Philip Buchanan. And in that book, I think Philip talks about the day that he got drafted. His mom told him that he owed her $1 million and for raising him. And I think that's one of the things that you see time and time again is guys that maybe come from certain populations that have never had that type of money, and now all of a sudden it's all thrown at them at once. And they got aunts and uncles and cousins and neighbors and people from the community that feel like they're all entitled to that. So that's the hard part. That's the hard part is teaching these guys how to handle all these things and the challenges that come with it. I think one of the more difficult for anybody to learn is to say no to people. Say no to people. I think, we all feel a sense of responsibility to help our communities and help our families, but, you also don't want to end up as another statistic. You don't want to end up another guy like that.
James, to follow up Bob's question, can you comment on the 3 guys who did get drafted and your thoughts on them and their future? And also comment on Mike. Were you surprised that Mike didn't get drafted?
Well, first of all, I was really surprised that Mike Cole didn't get drafted. I honestly think if Mike can get in the right system and stay healthy, I think he'll play 8 to 10 years in the NFL. I think he's that type of guy. He's way too productive. I think college coaches as well as NFL coaches get way too caught up in measurables sometimes, height, weight, speed, things like that. We all know Mike's a guy, you're walking in the mall and you see him, he's not going to jump out to you. But you turn on the tape and you watch how productive he is and his leadership skills and all those things, he's invaluable. He's invaluable. So Mike's going to find a way to play. He's going to find a way to be successful. I believe that. The other guys, obviously Donovan getting drafted really highly and being able to go to the draft and represent Penn State really well, except for the tie. That was the only thing that I wasn't a big fan of, was the tie he wore at the draft. But besides that, he looked sharp and did a great job. We're so happy he got drafted in the 2nd round. Obviously, he's got tremendous ability, tremendous talent. He's got a body and some skills that the good Lord just doesn't make a whole lot of guys like that. Jesse James, it's kind of a great story for Jesse. Obviously, being able to go back home to Pittsburgh. I think their situation there, he's got a really good opportunity as well. Jesse's a guy that, is I think the one guy that hasn't graduated, so we're strongly encouraging him to come back and finish that up. I know that's very important to him and that's very important to us. And I think the fact that he's local is going to help with that, to be honest with you. And then the last guy is Amos. Really, really pleased with him and really, really happy for him. He gives the team the flexibility. I think that's the thing that makes him so valuable. A guy that can play corner, can play safety, can play nickel. Has got the body to be able to play on a lot of different special teams unit as well. Another Penn State grad. And as you guys know, that group of guys is special to all of us. Anybody that cares about Penn State, they're special to us because they've been through a lot. I'm happy for them, and I'm also happy for all the guys that are signing free agent contracts. We're waiting till all those things are confirmed so we can put them out on our website as well and make sure that they're official before we announce anything. But we're really happy for those guys as well.
Following up, have you had a chance to talk to Dion, and is this a situation that you could maybe use as a cautionary example moving forward for guys who decide to leave early?
Well, I just think there's so many variables that go into it. Everybody's situation is unique to them and their family and things like that. Dion thought all along that this was the right thing for him to do. We tried to give him as much advice and mentor him through the process as much as possible. That company is involved with that as well. But at the end of the day, these guys are going to make decisions that they think in their best interest and in their families based on all the information that they have. One of the, I think the real challenges is to make sure that, and I'm not talking Dion, I'm just talking in general here. I think one of the real challenges is a lot of people are giving them advice, and a lot of people that are giving those guys the advice are going to make 3% off of them. So we want to make sure that's why we hire an outside company that's going to give them advice that's not biased. That's in their best interest long term. But I think Dion, even today, is confident that he made the right choice.
We have time for one more.
On that company and players getting schooled before taking that next step, at what point does that process start for a player, and does it vary from player to player?
We started right away as freshmen with them and their families. We bring them in a couple times a year, a couple times a semester. For example, the spring game, the morning of the spring game, we had a session where all the parents of our entire team were invited to go to that. And they were able to sit down and ask questions. It was a presentation to start, and then there was questions after that. So, we try to start it as early as possible because, again, I learned this at our last institution. Had a young man that was trying to decide to come out, And I'm scrambling around during the recruiting process to get him and his family all the information, and I didn't feel like I was prepared. And learn from that situation, want to make sure that it doesn't happen in the future. That young man came back and graduated and is now playing for the Eagles. But I learned a lot from that experience.
Thank you, Coach.
Awesome. Thanks,
Athletic
guys.
Director Sandy Barber will be in here momentarily.